Kyle Pitts has obviously been disappointing in Dynasty Fantasy Ball over the last couple of years. Would you consider Kyle Pitts a bust? Let us know in the comments before you even start this video if Kyle Pitts is a bust. But when you're looking at Kyle Pitts over the last couple of years, I mean, obviously in his rookie season, Kyle Pitts was able to produce at a pretty historic level. It looked like he was going to absolutely pan out in terms of being a prospect. He was the tight end 6 in his first season. He had 176 fantasy points that year. He had 110 targets. And this is non-tight end premium as well. Yeah. I mean, looking at tight end premium leagues, he was very good. He had 1,000 yards in his rookie season. However, since then, and you're looking at what he's done for the Falcons since his rookie season. Last year, he had 59 targets for 350 yards. So far this year, 38 targets for 250 yards. Keep in mind that last year he played in 10 games, so only about half the season. But this year, he's on pace for, if we're a third way through the season, he's on pace for 750 yards. And 60 receptions. I mean, you cannot deny that he's been disappointing for where you were drafting him.
Yeah.
After his rookie year, he was going at the end of the first, early second in Dynasty leagues. And this year, even, he was still going third round, fourth round. So is Kyle Pitts a bust? That's the question.
So this kind of raises the question, and this is kind of the whole point of the video. When do you determine whether a player, a Dynasty asset, is a bust? When do you basically fold on the player and say, hey, I'm not investing in him anymore. I'm taking the market value loss and I'm moving on. I'm moving on to the next day. I'm moving on to the next class. Kyle Pitts is one of those guys where some people are going to be considering that. Is he, based off his production in the first 3 years, a bust? You're looking at him putting up 1,000 yards and finishing as tight end 5 his rookie season with only 1 touchdown. Has the injury last season midway through the year. And then this season, Jonnu Smith is outproducing Kyle Pitts. So I think you're looking at that and you're saying, hey, this guy might be a bust. We're going to say on Kyle Pitts specifically, the verdict for us is going to be not quite.
Not yet.
He's not quite a bust. And when the reason we're not going to go as far as saying that he's a bust is look at the other tight ends around the league. What are they doing after Travis Kelce? Jack squat. They're not doing anything. Zero. Nothing consistent. I mean, you could have one big 25-point game as a tight end right now, today, and you would make yourself up into the top 6 producing tight ends.
He is a top 12 tight end because he's had 2 tight end 1 finishes in the last 2 weeks. It's all it takes is a tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, with as rocky as it is, he could easily still be a top 6 Dynasty tight end after this year, even if he doesn't have a very good year.
Yep.
That said, he's looking a little bit better. He's been a little bit more consistent the last couple weeks. But it's too early to say that Kyle Pitts is a bust, especially with tight ends. When you're looking at the tight end position, tight ends usually take multiple years to develop into what they actually are as a player. You see this all over the league. There are so many examples of this. So with Kyle Pitts, it would be unfair to go through and say that he's a bust right now because I think the jury's still out on what Kyle Pitts' ceiling is in the NFL.
I think you could attribute a lot of this being low on Kyle Pitts, and we were low on Kyle Pitts going into the season, but right now you could attribute this to the situation in Atlanta. The fact that Arthur Smith hates your fantasy team, the fact that Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson are splitting time, Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts putting up the same amount of production pretty much every single week, and then Drake London being Drake London with Desmond Ridder trying to throw interceptions, and London just won't let that happen. I'm optimistic about Kyle Pitts in the future because, one, I'm hopeful that he goes to a different team. I really am. But even if he doesn't and he gets a second deal, he's going to get a second deal. And look at his talent as a receiver, which can directly translate to fantasy points in the future. He is 5th in deep targets, so he's still a very versatile tight end as a route runner. He is only 18th in red zone targets. That is very concerning, and that's something we'll want to keep an eye on in the future. But his average depth of target as a wide receiver, essentially a wide receiver playing tight end, is 11.7, first among tight ends in the NFL. He's first in air yard share and first in air yards overall.
His efficiency metrics are always great.
Yeah.
Because they hardly pass the ball there. And when they do, he's getting a respectable amount of volume relatively.
First in unrealized air yards, too.
Yeah. So we're going to wait on Kyle Pitts. But the next guy, and I want to do the next guy as well.
Yeah.
The next guy has finished in his 4 years so far in the NFL, including this year and where he's at currently, as the wide receiver 45, or 47 in PPR leagues, 85, 22, and this year he's the wide receiver 61.
Yikes.
The question becomes, is Jerry Jeudy a bust? And our answer is
yes,
he is a bust. Jerry Jeudy is absolutely somebody as a dynasty asset is going to be a bust. Even looking at this league right here where I'm looking at the stats, picked in the 6th round last year. you are not getting 6th-round dynasty production out of Jerry Jeudy. And last year, you could argue that wasn't even 6th-round dynasty production. Maybe it was. But when you're talking about a guy coming out of college that was a highly touted prospect, a guy that's still 24 years old, but he's going to be coming off his rookie deal, and the Broncos are going to be rebuilding soon. They are probably going to trade Jerry Jeudy. And when they do, what are we doing with Jerry Jeudy?
Selling the heck out of him.
Because he's not, guys. From where he was going in dynasty rookie drafts and in the dynasty drafts for the last 4 years consistently, Jerry Jeudy's a dynasty bust. This is somebody that we've held on to for a long time. It's like, oh, wait till he gets a quarterback. And last year was like, oh, wait till he gets a year under his belt. And then we said Courtland Sutton is nothing, and Courtland Sutton is outproducing him right now by a lot. It's unfortunate because Jerry Jeudy really was such a talented prospect coming out. But I think we fail to realize a lot of times just how many prospects bust. And Jerry Jeudy is a perfect example of one. And look at Courtland Sutton, even in that offense, even though it's very bad this year, is the wide receiver 30. He's been twice as good from a production standpoint as well. He's been twice as good as Jerry Jeudy this year. And Courtland Sutton is not really an elite talent. And this is Jerry Jeudy's 4th year in the NFL. And I know you can say he's been injured. Guys, injury contributes to somebody being a bust. It's been 4 years. If you blame all that on injury, then he became a bust because of injury. It's not just injury, though.
Yeah, and your route running and your skill as a wide receiver is supposed to transcend quarterback situation if you are really that good of a wide receiver. And Jerry Jeudy over the past 4 seasons has had a reputation of being a very, very good route runner. But that's not really adding up. When you're looking at his reception perception numbers and his route trees, I mean, he is below average almost everywhere. And when you're looking at his percentile, his success rate against the man, 63rd percentile. Success rate against the zone, 5th percentile. Against press, 49th percentile.
This is a guy that was touted as a very good route runner coming out of college.
Yeah.
Do remember. All right, you got the next guy.
Yeah, so the next guy we're going to have here is going to be Najee Harris. And this is... There's a lot of layers to this.
A ton. Context is really important here.
It's kind of hilarious because let's date back to his rookie year. Finishes as running back 4 in PPR. He has like 76 targets or 76 receptions. I think his
74 receptions.
74 receptions.
94 targets.
94 targets. Like, that is elite level, Austin Eckler-esque target volume that you're getting from Najee Harris. Obviously drafted very high going into his 2nd season. We said pump the brakes a little bit with Najee Harris, but we weren't really not drafting him going into his 2nd year because we liked his market value still. But ultimately, we said he may not finish as a running back 4. His receiving usage may go down a bit because they don't have Ben Roethlisberger anymore, who's a statue, and they're not going to check it down as much. Not only did he get less receiving usage, he went from like elite level receiving usage to receiving upside irrelevant in his 2nd year. And fast forward to year 3, 2023, right now, in fantasy football, we were very optimistic about Najee Harris. We said, hey, he's a great value in Dynasty right now. He's probably going to outproduce most likely what he did last season. His receiving usage will probably go back up just a little bit. We'll meet in the middle somewhere between year 1 and year 2. Nope, wrong, completely wrong. We'll take the L big time. Was Najee Harris a bust? I think the verdict for us was yes, we'll take the L there. He was absolutely a bust. And it's funny how things come full circle because in the middle of last year, there are a lot of people in Dynasty who are like, don't give up on Najee. You know, he's had all these terrible situations. We're like, no, actually, his career track is looking like Trent Richardson. And it was funny because we ended up liking him in Dynasty this year. But ultimately, you've got to look at his efficiency metrics. The fact that Jaylen Warren is consistently outproducing him in the receiving game, in the running game. And every time Najee touches the ball, he looks like he's running through mud. Do you want any more analysis than that? I guess if you really want a ton of statistical analysis, we could give it to you. But there's not much more you need to do than just watch a freaking Pittsburgh Steelers game and watch Najee Harris run the ball, and you know he is going nowhere.
I don't think you can argue with this one. Najee Harris was a 1st-round Dynasty pick.
He's absolutely a bust based off that
makes
draft
you a
capital.
Bust. When you're a 1st-round Dynasty pick and you finish as the RB14, you're not even an running back 1. Not to mention this year, he is the RB41. Yeah, he's a bust. In Dynasty leagues, absolutely. Where he's being drafted, even this year, 5th round, 4th round.
I would define that as a bust.
That's a bust, guys.
Yep.
Treylon Burks is going to be next. Treylon Burks is a guy that we've been highly touted. I mean, we have really been on the Treylon Burks train since he was coming out of college. Is Treylon Burks a bust? Let's say this one together. No,
not yet.
You cannot say that a second-year wide receiver is a bust just yet. I mean, nobody was saying Jerry Jeudy was a bust after his third year. So I definitely think you have to apply the same standard to Treylon Burks, who's 23 years old, and obviously last year did pretty much nothing. He had 94 fantasy points. He was the wide receiver 79. And then this year, he is so far the wide receiver 103. But there are a couple different factors here. Number one, he went to a pretty bad situation for wide receivers there. I mean, he went to a situation so bad that DeAndre Hopkins can't really produce in that offense. He went to a situation like where they're going to be giving Derrick Henry a ton of touches a game last year, and this year, between him and Tajay, same thing. Going to a situation where everybody thought Chigo Okonkwo would be a tight end one this year, and he's pretty much been irrelevant. The Titans are probably the worst wide receiver situation in the league. So you do need to take that into account. I think if Will Levis were even to step on the field, as bad as Will Levis is and as disgusting as he is for putting mayonnaise in his coffee, I think he would give Treylon Burks a boost. Now, you also have to keep in mind that Treylon Burks is out right now. He's injured, and injuries have been a concern for Treylon Burks. If Treylon Burks is going to shake the status of potentially being a bust, he's going to have to stay healthy for the next couple of years. We have seen flashes from Treylon Burks, but it's been largely just kind of meh because of the situation, because he's been injured, because he essentially was learning a new position his first year. I mean, a lot of people thought he'd come in and play big slot. He played a lot of X. That's not on Treylon.
No, and he's not even really playing big slot. When you're looking at his average
he's
depth
not playing big slot at all.
When he's playing average depth, his average depth of target this year, 4th in the league in a very small sample size, but 4th in the league at 18.1 average depth of target. I think that screams deep threat, and that screams big playability, but not much fantasy consistency in Tennessee's offense in that situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot left to be seen. First, the first thing we ask of Treylon, and this is on Treylon, and this is why he's decreased in value significantly, he has got to be on the field. He has to stay on the field. And if anything, I would be more willing, I don't throw this around much, I would be more willing to say Treylon Burks is injury prone before I were to say that he's a bust, because we've seen less of him than we've seen him on the field.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt. Take our take of Treylon Burks with a grain of salt. We may be a little biased because we like him a lot as a talent. We have since he came out of college. There are no efficiency metrics. There are not enough statistics. There's not enough sample size from him at Tennessee for us to really give you statistics on why we think Treylon Burks is not a bust. But on the flip side, there's not enough statistics or sample size for you to say that he is. So that's why our verdict right now is to hold Treylon Burks. We're not the biggest on buying. We do like him as a buy. We do. He's not our biggest buy in Dynasty right now, but at his price,
I have enough of him.
There's not much that you're losing out on if you're giving up maybe a late second for him, because he's valued as wide receiver 49 right now. He's not even worth like a late second. So definitely a guy that you want to keep an eye on. Don't label him as a bust yet. Next guy we're going to have here is Pat Freiermuth.
We can answer this one with by definition of the first one. Why was Kyle Pitts not a bust?
Because of how much of a dumpster fire the tight end position has been this season.
And because it's really only his third year. These guys are in the same draft class. And the other thing is with Pat Freiermuth, the expectations for Pat Freiermuth were nearly as high.
They were way too high.
Yeah, but not near as high as Kyle Pitts, though.
No.
Not even close.
Yes. And when you're looking at his production this year in 4 games played, only 8 receptions for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. So essentially, most of his production came from touchdowns. This is something that we saw coming from a mile away. And in Dynasty this offseason, we were saying, stop investing in Pat Freiermuth in the 7th round when you can get a higher producing tight end asset in a better situation 5 or 6 rounds later. That has come to fruition in the first 6 weeks of the year. And now you can get Pat Freiermuth at a discount. And as a talent, again, we've never been against Pat Freiermuth as a talent. It has always been the price. And if he's being labeled as a bust, if he's being labeled as a dynasty or fantasy bust because of the situation and the fact that he's probably going to be stuck there for a while, I think you might want to jump on that later, maybe as a throw-in in some of the dynasty deals that you're making, because his talent has not decreased. He hasn't lost who he is in the first 2 seasons. He's definitely a guy that we have on our radar.
And to be fair, his situation really hasn't been that great either.
No.
Having Kenny Pickett throw you the ball is not great. And Ben Roethlisberger's last year wasn't great.
No.
Moving down to Kadarius Toney. Now, this one's kind of funny because in our eyes, of course, he's not a bust because we always said Kadarius Toney, not very good. He's not
He's not a bust for
Not
us.
a bust for us.
Is he a bust for everyone else?
Probably.
Yeah.
Even though it's only his third year, I mean, Kadarius Toney not only has not been able to stay on the field, but he's not really been able to produce at all.
We've got to, at this point, we have to let go of the first-round draft capital. And some people may say this about Treylon Burks, and I think, honestly, your point
Next
is
year, your
merited
point
there.
will be valid.
Your point will be valid next year.
He needs to put together.
Yep.
But with Toney, I mean, he's playing with Patrick Mahomes, guys.
There's no excuse for him.
And they've given him plenty of opportunity, and he's just straight up not been super good. Just straight up not been super good. With Toney, look, I mean, I think if you were even investing an 8th, 9th, 10th round pick in him, yeah, he's been a bust for you. Absolutely, he has.
Yeah.
And his teammate.
Skyy Moore, man. Since this is only Skyy Moore's second year,
Can't say he's a bust.
I cannot say that he's a bust quite yet because he has gotten some opportunities, not a ton. 21 targets through the first 6 games, 11 receptions, 145 yards, 13.2 yards per reception, and a receiving touchdown. Obviously, nothing that you're able to start in fantasy, nothing that you're able to really flex in your dynasty leagues, but overall, you're looking at the situation, you're saying, okay, and they invested a second-round pick in him, which is more than they invested to go and trade for Kadarius Toney. I think you're going to see this offense, who is very depleted of talent, past Travis Kelce, to continue to try to develop these young guys. And Skyy Moore, unlike Kadarius Toney, has actually capitalized on his few opportunities. Is he the most talented guy there? No. Is he going to finish as the top leading wide receiver this year or maybe even next year? Probably not. I'd probably bet on Rashee Rice.
So he probably will be a bust.
Could he eventually be a bust based off of where he was going at price last season?
Yes.
Likely.
Yes.
Likely. We're going to give it just a little bit more time, though, because you do have to recognize the situation. You do have to recognize the fact that he was very underdeveloped to begin with. He didn't come from a Power 5 conference. He was hyper-productive at a small school. They knew that when they drafted him. So I think you're looking at Skyy Moore and the type of wide receiver that he plays, being a kind of a gadget guy, doing a lot of jet sweeps, getting some screen plays and opportunities. I think if he's able to kind of boost his role in that offense, maybe you'll see a little bit more out of him as the season progresses.
And rounding this video out, we're going to go with another third-year wide receiver in Rashod Bateman. Man, I mean, I'm looking at this league. We drafted it this year, drafted it the 804. He has 15 targets through 5 games.
Is Rashod Bateman a bust?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a bust.
Yep.
I mean, for years, we've drafted him in the single-digit rounds of Dynasty startups, and his PPR finishes are 69, nice, 112, and 102.
Yeah. And I think this is something where you could just go as far as looking at the Zay Flowers pick and
how quickly
I think that was the nail in the coffin for Rashod Bateman. At least it was for us. We weren't super.
You could say he's only 23. It's true. I don't think this one's going to flip. This is just us calling it early. We think he's a bust.
Yeah.
So, all right, let us know what you think. Do you agree with us on some of those? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments. I'm sure you will let us know what your opinion is because you always do.
If you think we didn't give you enough analysis, then give us some of yours. That'd be really nice to hear.
Yeah. Do us a huge favor, drop a like on the video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. Also, if you want one of these Dynasty blueprints, check out flockfantasy.com/domain. When you use code domain and you choose the mother flock chair, you get a Dynasty blueprint. And what this does, it basically gives you a multi-year outlook for your Dynasty teams, gives you an idea of what your current roster build is, what your position groups grade out as, it give you a depth score. It's going to tell you some players to trade away and target, along with a lot of other things. So it's basically just a comprehensive plan for your Dynasty team in the future, help you get it back up to speed. Like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain and choose the mother flock chair to get the blueprint. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. See you later.